Miami started off listlessly in their rematch versus Toronto until a third quarter surge led by Jimmy Butler put Miami up by 8. But with Jimmy sitting for most of the fourth quarter, the Raptors came back to win 98-90, dropping the Heat to 1-3 on the season. Can Miami figure out their problems offensively during their West Coast road trip? We break down the game and answer your questions on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app, thank you so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil, recording this late Monday night after the Miami Heat lose to the Toronto Raptors 98-90, falling to 1-3 to start their season right before they start this West Coast swing. Look, there's a lot of different directions that we can go in, David, but I want to zoom out and just go big picture because I'm not all that interested in talking about this game specifically. We'll get to Blame Pie later on. We do have some listener questions about what went down in the fourth quarter in this game, but just again, zooming out a little bit now, the Heat 1-3 at the start of the season, the problems were defense. Then there was offensive concerns. You talked to players in Spoelstra after the game tonight. The transition defense was a problem. The fact that they only went 8 for 33 from three-point range was a big problem too. My big question, David, is what's going on with this team that Erik Spoelstra himself admitted nobody would have thought we would have been 1-3 at this point in the season with a homestand to start the season. Is this, I mean, what is your level of concern right now? 1 to 10?
A 5. It can't be panicking because we've seen too many teams, including this one or iterations of this team, figure it out at some point. And I'm still a believer in, if not the strength of this roster in terms of its talent level, however you choose to use that term to describe how good a basketball player is. I think there are really good players on this roster. I think there are good role players on this roster. And we just haven't seen the depth be a factor because we've been missing key players, whether it's Omer Yurtseven, who hasn't played a single minute this season, or Victor Oladipo, who has yet to play a single minute. You know, tonight, Caleb Martin, his energy, his intermittent three-point shooting, his slashing ability would have been a factor in what was a very close game. He just wasn't available. You have to play other players significant amount of time. And I will say Erik Spoelstra a little hesitant to play guys like Nikola Jovic, who might provide a spark. Going too often to the Haywood Highsmith well, for my tastes, because Haywood just hasn't shown the ability to do anything at an elite level, which I hate saying because, we like him on this show. We like his energy. We like the potential of what he can bring, but he just hasn't actually brought it. So this roster has been incomplete. And on top of all that, as you and I talked about before we started recording, it's a flawed roster to boot. So there are problems already as it is. Even if they were completely healthy, there would still be some growing pains in trying to figure out what to do defensively and most notably offensively. I think those were the bigger issues. Yes, they've had problems defensively, but as Bam alluded to in his post-game press conference, if those shots are falling, that doesn't lead to easy rebounds for Precious Achiuwa.
Yeah.
To ignite a fast break or something like that. It doesn't lead to wide open transition shots. Those shots have to fall. So my level of concern is mostly about the offensive end. I think defensively they'll figure out. Jimmy seems so not disinterested, but he just didn't seem at all concerned. So I have to believe that the players on this team can figure it out. And my concern is going into a West Coast road trip where you're taking on the reigning NBA champions, not to mention some plucky teams in Portland and Sacramento. Those present an opportunity for a bonding experience to kind of figure it out because there's something about being on the road where you kind of have to figure it out, or it could be a nail in the coffin of the season, which,
I wouldn't,
that might be a little,
it seems extreme,
exaggerating, but at the same time, like we talked about it before the season started.
Yeah.
This was a golden opportunity for them to get off to a hot start at home, winning, playing 10 of your 14 games in FTX, your first 14 games before taking on, 17 of your next 21 on the road. So this was a great opportunity for them, and unfortunately, they've struggled with it.
I'm going to go back to something you said and the growing pains part of this. And that's what I think the Heat coaching staff and front office need to parse out a little. And the leaders among the players in that locker room need to figure out in the coming days is how much of this is growing pain and how much of this is just the flawed part of the roster. How much of this is growable? Like how much, if we go through the growing pains, how much of this stuff can we really solve? Or is there just sort of an inherent ceiling, a limit to what this team can do? And I'm going to tell you, David, you said you're on a 5 out of 10. I'm closer to a 7, maybe even an 8. I don't think that this roster is talented enough. And I know that you have an issue with the word talent. I'll tell you what talent to me is. It's the fact that there is just too many role players being asked to do too much on this team. You're asking Gabe Vincent to save your offense in that second unit. Yeah, I know Victor Oladipo hasn't been available with the tendinosis stuff, whatever. Max Strus is being asked to do too much. Caleb Martin is being asked to do too much, starting at power forward when he's a wing player. And what that screams to me is that you just don't have the right personnel. You don't have enough talent. You don't have enough size. I'll go back to what I was saying before. If the concerns are defensive, all right, well, let's talk about the defensive issues then. This team gave up 27 fast break points to Toronto. They scored just 13 themselves. Why did they give up so many points in transition? Well, because they're undersized and they have to crash the boards. And so if you don't crash the boards, you're giving something up on the glass, and you're not. And instead of getting back and all this stuff, so you have to crash the boards. And when you're crashing the boards, you're not getting back fast enough. This team also went 8 of 33 from three-point range. At least they took 33s in this game. And yeah, everybody wants to say, well, you know what? If we make some of these shots, it looks different. Yeah, true. But this has not been a good shooting team all season, and you can't play guys like Duncan Robinson more than 15 minutes because you don't trust him on defense. Max Strus is being asked to do too much, and he's going 0 for 8 from three-point range. You got Kyle Lowry, who we will touch on in Blame Pie, going 1 for 6 from three-point range. In all, you had Tyler Herro, Kyle Lowry, and Max Strus combined 3 for 23 from three-point range. That's just not good enough from a shooting perspective. At the end of the game, you've got Pascal Siakam just posting up Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Tyler Herro, whoever it's going to be, and just shooting over them. Not because the defense wasn't good, just because this team is kind of small. And Pascal Siakam is kind of big, and he could just shoot over dudes. And we saw that in game 1 with DeMar DeRozan, who's not even as big as Siakam, but he's a great mid-range shooter, and he was just shooting over whoever was in front of him. I just don't think that this team is good enough. And that's where I might look ridiculous in a couple of weeks, because also Eric Spoelstra is a genius coach, and Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and Kyle Lowry are genius players. And maybe this is just a growing pain thing where you work your way through these issues and you figure out the formula that makes everything click together. And by the way, if I look like an idiot in 2 weeks, great. I hope I do. I just don't know that this roster is talented enough right now to overcome all of these myriad issues that they have, because it just feels like, okay, you plug one hole and another one pops open, and unless they're just playing a perfect game, it's going to be really hard to beat good teams. Yeah, 1-3 at home, David, I get it, and that's disappointing, but they were against Chicago, Boston, and 2 games against Toronto. Those are good, those are playoff caliber teams. So, but I do think, that's what you're going to have to do, is beat those teams in the playoffs, and I just don't. I think they have to work too hard for everything.
A couple things. Nice of you to put that 2-week window in there to look like an idiot, knowing that you're going to be going on your honeymoon at that point in time, so you can't be called out on your mistakes nowadays. Right. So that's really convenient. It's like saying, "Oh yeah, but tell me in July whether or not I was wrong about this roster." Anyway, about the quality level of competition, I was thinking about that even as you're describing it. It's like, yeah, but they've gone up against really good teams, like Chicago knocking off Boston in another game earlier tonight, and the Raptors, obviously, with their size and length, providing a matchup for a Miami team that is somewhat undersized at this point. But that's just the Eastern Conference. Like, they're going to go up against Cleveland at some point. How are they going to go up against the length of Jared Allen or your Evan Mobley?
Yeah,
that's going to be a challenge for them. You're going to have to take on Milwaukee and Brook Lopez and Giannis Antetokounmpo. It doesn't get any easier. And then if you're looking at it from that perspective, well, hell, Orlando hasn't won a single game, but I'm not sure how Paolo Banchero and Bol are going to fare against this roster at this point in time. So
yeah, who stops Paolo on this roster? I don't know. Like and that's the thing too. You're going to be asking Jimmy Butler to probably do that, and now you're just asking so much of him. This team is being stretched all the way to the brink against good teams, and unless they play a perfect game, it's really hard to compete. I'm not trying to do sky is falling. They lost by 8 points. They had a chance at the end of this one, and they could have swept Toronto. They're 2-2 going into this road trip, and we're talking about things probably a little bit differently. But I can't shake the feeling that, like, you lose PJ Tucker. You don't really have a power forward on this roster. We're going to get to some of the other issues in the front court. But I'm looking at this team, David, and they have one functional front court player because Dwayne Dedmon has not been good this year. They don't have a real power forward on the roster. Nikola Jovic is a rookie who obviously Spoelstra does not trust to play against good Eastern Conference teams. Haywood Highsmith is not a front court player, but they're forced to play him at minutes in center in the first week of the season. And Omer Yurtseven has been hurt. So they have one functional big on the entire roster. So no wonder they look even more undersized than they already inherently are, even when they are healthy. There's a lot of issues. We got a lot of blame pie to hand out, too. We're going to get to that here in a minute. But first, let's talk about LinkedIn. These days, every potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. And I'll tell you, in my past life, when I was I was a wine sales manager, and making the right hire could completely change our sales goals and achieving those goals in a year. I remember one time hiring this girl right out of college, young, but we went through a rigorous interview process. We hired the right person, and boom, completely flipped the territory overnight. It made my job so much easier. It is easy, speaking of easy, to post these jobs on LinkedIn Jobs. All you have to do is put the post together. You can put all the qualifications in that post that you are looking for, so you're sorting out all the people right away. Then all you have to do is add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you could quickly prioritize how you'd like to interview and hire. Again, I know it's October, but you can make the right hire now and completely change your year and achieve those goals that you may have for your company. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba. Your post to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, back here with Locked On Heat. We're going to get into some blame pie here in a minute. But first, thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. Now make your second listen game-to-game NBA, every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On game-to-game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow game-to-game on the Locked On NBA podcast feed. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Well, David, that smell you smell is a smelly smell of another smelly loss. It is time to hand out some blame pie. Who are we handing out our first slice to?
Well, you mentioned it. I think it's fair to start off with the former Raptor himself, Kyle Lowry. 36 minutes of play, 1 of 8 from the field, 1 of 6 from three-point range, just 3 rebounds, 2 assists. So the floor general leading everybody to their death out on the floor tonight. Only 7 points from Kyle Lowry and not much else. It's too easy to point to him, but at the same time, it's the right choice. He was problematic out there, and Miami has this season. It seems like as we were talking about this before we started recording, like they kind of live and die with Lowry, and I think that's just the case. Is that you need, at the very least, a decent performance from him in order to eke out a win. And I know it was just an 8-point swing there between the Raptors and Heat, but it still feels like, if Lowry had been able to contribute at a higher level, things would have been a little bit closer. Just
He was a 0 plus minus, okay? Like that perfectly encapsulates exactly, because he's not a negative, right? He's smart enough to get guys in the right position and kind of do stuff. He's not a complete negative. But when we're talking about your point guard who you're paying $30 million a year, and it was just your big swing 2 summers ago and all these things, you can't just be neutral. You have to be an add. You have to be a value add to this roster, and that seems crazy to even say that you need your point guard to do something. But that's sort of what that's been the issue with Kyle Lowry all season long. He's had 1 good game in the 4 games to start the season, period, point blank. You look at the guy that he mentored in Toronto, Fred VanVleet, he was a plus 13, 24 points, 6 of 16 shooting, 4 of 6 from three-point range. He had 9 assists. He had 4 rebounds. Kyle Lowry it just feels like he's not doing anything out there. He's passive. He's not forcing himself onto the game in the way that you want your point guard to do. And so I'm with you. You have to hand out blame pie to Kyle Lowry. I'm willing to we have 10 slices to give out, just like after every loss. I'm willing to give him 5. I really am. And maybe that's just sort of lingering frustrations over the other losses too, where I just keep heaping more and more blame pie on his plate, but it kind of feels appropriate.
I can't argue with that. I mean, and that's something that he has to feel himself too. Like, it's one thing to have a bad game and you can kind of brush it off and say, shots in and fall. You bounce back. But he's had 2 okay games, sandwiched between 2 really terrible games. And so he has to be more cognizant of the fact that he has to be a better player out there. And I know there's the slow starts that have been typical for his career. That's not good enough. This team can't function that way. And if he's not getting everybody else involved, and by that, I mean, like, not even setting up Bam so that he could get better or easier looks at the rim and things of that sort. If he's not even doing that, then he's got to be more productive as a scorer. So 5 feels right, even if it might be a slight overindulgence on his part.
You mentioned the next guy, Bam Adebayo. I'm giving him 2 slices. I thought his game overall was pretty okay. 4 of 14, 10 rebounds, 3 assists. Did have 3 turnovers for 14 total points.
2 blocks,
but
so solid defensive.
2 blocks, yeah. You look at who he was going against, right? None of this stuff is in a vacuum. You got to look at the matchup here. And I know he was going against future Hall of Famer Christian Koloko, but it's still a rookie in Christian Koloko.
Too soon.
It's still a rookie in Christian Koloko. And if I'm Bam Adebayo and I see Koloko lined up in front of me, considering all that just happened with Caleb Martin and Koloko in the game previous over the weekend, I got to be licking my chops saying, okay, rookie, let me show you how it's done. I'm an all-star. I'm an all-NBA player. I'm aggressive Bam Adebayo this year. Let me show you how I'm going to do this. And I just didn't feel that from him tonight. Again, 14 shots. It's an okay amount. It's more than what he averaged last year, around 13 shots. But you're going up against a rookie, a slender rookie who shouldn't have any idea of how to guard you. He should have been putting up 20 shots. And what's frustrating with Bam too is he'll get the, and we've talked about this a million times, but he'll get the rocket like 5-6 feet away from the basket, and instead of turning and either taking a drop step and getting to the rim with force and dunking or something like that, or even just laying it up off the glass Tim Duncan style, he floats it. He just does that little weird 5-6 foot push shot, and the touch on that comes and goes. And tonight it was going way more than it was there for him. And so I didn't love the Bam Adebayo game. I thought he just left a lot of points on the table.
This felt like one of those matchups where Bam feels much more undersized than he should be.
Yeah.
And I know you have to credit Toronto's overall size and things of that sort, but he just does not seem capable of handling these bigger players. And again, it's not getting easier. We talked about the Cleveland Twin Towers, and then he's going to go up against Brook Lopez or Joel Embiid at some point. And if he's not able to take advantage of his strength and speed against this Toronto matchup, because they can match that, given their fact that they have a roster of 18 6'5" through 6'9" players, and Koloko, who's almost 7 feet, right?
Yeah.
Just another big wing player, front court player there. Like, he's a non-factor out there. And I think that's part of the hesitancy offensively, is that he felt like he was going to get his shot blocked, and he probably was. So I think it's problematic. I'm not sure. Maybe if Yurtseven had been healthy out there, and again, this is a lot of pressure for a second-year player who has had an okay stretch midway through last season when he wasn't on a single scouting report. But something has to give here, because either you're going to have another front court player that can take some of the weight off of Bam's shoulders, or you're just going to put Bam out there in a position to fail frequently, and that's not a good place for him to be.
Last one I want to do is Dwayne Dedmon. He's getting 3 pieces of blame pie. That might not be enough. We just only have 10 to give out. So, again, I'll look at the matchup again. Precious Achiuwa came out, 22 rebounds and 10 points. Dwayne Dedmon came out, had 1 rebound, 0 points. I mean, I know Toronto, that's not an exact matchup, because Toronto will play several centers at once and all these things, and Precious Achiuwa is playing 33 minutes and Dwayne Dedmon's playing 10. Whatever. Dwayne Dedmon has been really bad to start this entire season. I think it's coming to the point now, had Omer Yurtseven been healthy, he's probably already getting these Dwayne Dedmon minutes.
Should hope so.
But you were not.
I'd rather have Orlando Robinson out there at this point.
You were not expecting Dedmon to be this bad. And I don't think that they ever expected him to be worth $4 million a year. Again, that's a tradable contract that they signed with his bird rights, and that's the reason you do that in order to move him. But at this point, man, I mean, you need more from your backup center. If Dedmon's going to be like this, and if Yurtseven's going to be dealing with health issues, who knows how long this ankle thing is going to be keeping him out, and who knows what he looks like when he gets back? Because I think one of the reasons they re-signed Dedmon was in order to buy Yurtseven a little bit more time to develop. I don't think Yurtseven was going to be the primary backup behind Bam to start the season. I think that was Dedmon's job, even though he's losing it. I don't know. Maybe this team needs a backup center. I really don't know how Yurt is going to look when he comes back. So anyway, Dwayne Dedmon, 3 pieces of blame pie, and that's what we have left.
I mean, look, you mentioned that, and I know it's crazy, and I know we're probably not to that point of the season, but is it DeMarcus Cousins a better option right now than Dwayne Dedmon? Like, I know you can't sign him because of the tax and everything else, whatever. We're getting into cap gymnastics here. But like in terms of like at least a floor spacing big who can rebound and can also make plays for others, he's a really solid passer and always has been at the center position. It just seems like if you look at what the front court needs, it's somebody who can space the floor because Bam's not going to do it. Somebody who can make passes and feed your bigs in the inside, or Jimmy as he's cutting and slashing. DeMarcus can do that. And then occasionally rebound if he's near the paint. I mean, I don't know. He's a free agent.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I'll throw another name at you, and it's one I thought. Is Dwight Howard a better option than Dwayne Dedmon at this point?
Never.
He might be.
I will throw my headphones into Biscayne Bay and set myself on fire before we get Dwight Howard on this roster.
Very good. Jimmy Butler didn't get a whole lot of minutes in the fourth quarter, too. There are a lot of fans pointing to Eric Spoelstra to get a slice of blame pie. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. All right, let's get to some of our listener questions here. This one comes from Alan. What is Spoelstra doing in the fourth quarter in a game that you struggled to gain a good lead and you keep Jimmy out for so long in the fourth? Literally, Spo is making no sense. Literally, David. Should we mention then that, look, I don't think this is going to matter for people like Alan who want to see Jimmy Butler playing all 12 minutes in the fourth quarter, not realizing that Jimmy Butler obviously played tonight for 34 minutes, basically.
Too many minutes. That's what he played.
You made the point earlier on another show, I forget which one, but that he's been playing a ton of minutes just to start the season in every game. The problem with the fourth quarter was that Eric Spoelstra ran out of timeouts. I think he used the last one on the OG Anunoby challenge there, which was a good challenge. He won the challenge, but whatever. But Jimmy Butler was at the scores table for like a solid 2 minutes trying to check into the game, and there was just weirdly there was no stoppage in play because it was that stretch where Toronto and Miami couldn't make a bucket and nothing was happening. So Spoelstra admitted after the game that he probably, in retrospect, should have just had somebody foul just to get a stoppage in play to get Jimmy Butler checked in earlier. But he also thought that he got him at the scorer's table with enough time to get him in for those final 5 or 6 minutes instead of what it ended up being. So, it's tough. Maybe something like that does change the game, but that's, I guess, the reasoning behind it, why Jimmy wasn't in there earlier. Spo was trying to get him in there earlier, just didn't work out that way.
It should have never come to that. There's enough other players on this roster that could stop the bleeding. I think, we probably should have given some blame pie to Tyler Herro too, for as good as he was offensively. 4 costly turnovers in the fourth quarter, just with the ball in his hands, with Jimmy on the bench. It seemed like he wasn't making the right play at any point in time. Like, he hit a couple big shots out of the stretch to help Miami keep close to Toronto as they were pulling away. At the same time, maybe they wouldn't have pulled away so much if he hadn't thrown the ball away as often as he did. So I think that's an area of concern. I don't know. From my perspective at home, and I know you can see it a little differently where you're at the arena, it just felt, and I know the broadcast team of Eric Reed and John Crotty were pointing out, why is Jimmy on the bench? So maybe that's kind of driving home the point a little bit more for fans.
I didn't know that, yeah.
At the same time, he felt like he could have been out there a little bit longer, a little bit more soon at some point.
Yeah, look, Spo played Tyler Herro 40 minutes tonight. So there was an element in Eric Spoelstra's decision-making someplace where, hey, I'm going to play my guys heavy minutes because we got to win this one. There was a little bit, desperation seems like a strong word, but there was a little bit of, hey, we got to win this, an urgency. Thank you. So, like Jimmy, we're talking about the difference between playing 34 and 36 minutes if he gets in there a little bit sooner, where he played Tyler Herro 40 minutes. He played Kyle Lowry 36 minutes. He played Bam Adebayo 37, almost 38 minutes. So yeah, maybe Jimmy Butler could have played more minutes in the fourth quarter, point blank, and maybe that does change things. I thought that Tyler Herro, maybe I like Tyler Herro too much. I don't feel the need to give him any blame just because I thought he was the only one doing anything, and he was kind of on offense. And then when you're forced to be like a one-man offense the way he was tonight, yeah, you're going to turn the ball over some. I didn't love the shot that he took, that last shot. He came down the floor, made a three, got on the next possession, came down and sort of rushed a shot. And you can kind of see Jimmy Butler being like, "Why'd you do that?"
Yep.
I didn't love that shot selection, but then again, they've been asking him to do that the entire night, so why would he change? Right? Nobody else was really helping him that much offensively.
Are you getting a sense that some Heat players might be frustrated with Tyler's shot selection and that they're kind of looking him off when in transition at some points because I mean he is not necessarily a chucker, but he is looking to score first and foremost.
I'm not getting that sense, but I am getting the sense that there's they want to move the ball a little bit more on offense. I don't know that they're pinning Tyler Herro. I don't think they're pinning that on Tyler Herro. I don't. But I look on a night when he had it going, and it was basically him or Jimmy Butler getting to the free throw line. I don't know. I don't know that you can blame him all that much. I think if I'm a Heat player, I'm much more frustrated with Kyle Lowry because that's his job is to get the offense going, and it just doesn't feel like it has been.
That's
all right. Well, that'll do it for today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Ring the bell to get notified as soon as new episodes go up. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. That's it. Thanks for joining me, David.
What choice do I have?
Very good.